botanical gardens, we have a patio garden that we often display a lot of our succulents and cacti. But now in the fall, it's time to start bringing those that aren't hardy inside. And a lot of times we have to actually dig them up and replant them in a pot for the greenhouse. So today, because this can be a prickly task, we're going to talk about some easy ways to handle succulents and cactus. This here is a large golden barrel cactus, and one way to kind of handle that a little bit better is to get a rubber hose, or if you have an old garden hose, then you can use that, but it gives you a bit of a handle. Plus these long leather rose pruning gloves come in handy as well. So it allows you just to kind of handle a little bit better so that you don't get stabbed with these. Now, the other thing about cactus to know is that they can be a little deceiving. This one might not look quite that large, but it is very heavy because they're full of water. In addition, their potting media that we use is got a lot of aggregate, gravel, and grit in it, and so that tends to be heavier than some of your potting soils. The other thing to know is some of these softer, fuzzier looking cacti tend to be even more dangerous than the ones that have large, coarse spines. And that's because these, when they get in your skin, they're almost like fiberglass, and it's hard to find out where they are to remove them out of your skin, whereas this, it's like a thorn that you can pull out more easily. The other things to use for large cacti is a moving blanket, especially if you're going to put them on a dolly or something like that. Old carpet scraps are helpful as well. Sometimes other succulents can be just as dangerous to handle. Here we have an agave, and while it's not a cactus, it is a succulent that has sharp points to it. You can see here it's almost like a needle at the point of the leaf, as well as along the margins it has really sharp points. And it's good just to be aware of where those points are when you're handling it, and one way to kind of highlight it is just to get some styrofoam and put on the ends so that you can kind of see it. The other thing you can do is, if you don't have styrofoam, is you can just clip those ends. It's not going to do any damage to them, but it'll make it more of a blunt point for you. We're going to transplant some smaller cactus here. You can see the pot that they were in broke earlier this summer, and so unlike other plants, you typically don't want the roots to dry out. But with cacti, that is not a problem. And in fact, it helps to callus over those roots because if you were to transplant them immediately, sometimes those roots are damaged. And when you put them in there and you do water them a little bit, not too much, but sometimes that can lead to rot. So allowing these roots to dry in the air will callus over those roots and make them less susceptible. You can see here that I'm using barbecue tongs, which is a nice tool rather than using your hands to handle these. Another tool to use is just folded up newspaper. You can see here we have a prickly cactus in there, and using newspaper is a great way to hold those in place. So our potting media that we're going to use here is a mix of different things. We're not going to use just straight potting media because that would hold too much moisture for these plants. But instead we're using calcined clay, we're using vermiculite, coarse sand, some grit, and some pine bark fines. These are small pine bark. So this mixture will give us this mix. It's very coarse, and what's great about this is it allows a lot of drainage. We've also mixed in some micro and macronutrients as well, because typically you do want some nutrients in there. It's not just pure sand that we're planting these succulents in, but these will allow for good drainage. So here we've got our succulent. We're going to go ahead and get our roots in there. And I'm just using my hands to kind of maneuver that. The thing is you don't want to bury the plant. You just want to bury the roots and let the plant rest above the soil line. So there we have it. You can see here we have another one that has been laying, and it actually rooted on the side of it there. So while the plant will be laying down, the roots will be going down into the media, and we've got plenty of new growth that's coming up out of it. can also use a large kitchen spoon will help you move that material around that plant as well. The other thing is when you're digging in an old succulent garden bed, you want to be careful with your hands. Make sure you're wearing gloves or use a stick to kind of dig around in those roots, because there can be a lot of old spikes that still remain in the soil that can get into your hands. So this one, you can see it broke off the top, and this is actually the top of it. And we can plant both of these because they've both calloused over. This one does have a root system, and this one will develop a root system when we plant it in here. Now, the other thing is we're going to finish planting this one up. You can see it's got quite a root system on it. And we're just going to dig a hole and put that in here. Again, being careful not to bury the plant, just the roots themselves. We've got a little extra that I'll fill in with that. The nice thing about this material is it's heavy, and that's an important part because, again, these succulents tend to have a lot of moisture in them. So now that we have this planted up, we are going to give it just a little bit of a drink. Overwatering cactus is one of the main reasons why they die on us, and in the wintertime they're really not growing that much, so you don't want to water them that often at all. If you do see the leaves start to shrivel, then that's a sign that they may need more water. Now that we have it watered, we're going to take it and put it in a sunny location. Typically when you're transplanting cacti, you don't want to put them in full sun outside right away to allow them to establish those roots. But because we're moving them indoors in a full sunny window is a little bit less light than what they would be receiving outside. So hopefully this has helped you figure out how to handle this spiny task. Get some barbecue tongs, some moving blankets, some rose gloves, and all of those will help this task be a little bit smoother.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.